Hey guys, reading this book isn't easy at the best of times. Doing it from home is going to be a little bit extra difficult. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to upload videos of myself reading it just like I do in class. I'm going to stop, explain, break down, all of that good stuff. So what you want to do is maybe have a piece of paper, something to write with so that you can take notes whenever I stop, maybe write down what I'm saying, write down what page it's on, something like that that may help you. Also, there is a PowerPoint already uploaded onto RenWeb that reviews where we left off. So you may want to start out with looking at that. So, Book the Third, Chapter 1, In Secret. The traveler fared slowly on his way, who fared towards Paris from England in the autumn of the year 1792. More than enough of bad roads, bad equipages, and bad horses he would have encountered to delay him, though the fallen and unfortunate King of France had been upon his throne in all his glory. But the changed times were fraught with other obstacles than these. Okay, so I'm going to pause right there. There are two things that you want to recognize in this little bit. Number one is that the traveler is Charles Darnay. You need to remember that he's come to France to help Gabelle. So that's who they're talking about here. Number two, it says that there would have been bad roads, crappy horses. He would have encountered delays even if the King of France was still on the throne. So what that tells us is the King and Queen of France have been dethroned. The revolutionaries have overtaken everything. So, picking it back up. Every town gate and village taxing house had its band of citizen patriots, with their national muskets in a most explosive state of readiness, who stopped all comers and goers, cross-questioned them, inspected their papers, looked for their names in list of their own, turned them back or sent them on, or stopped them and laid them on hold, as their capricious judgment or fancy deemed best for dawning Republic One. And, oops, something happened. Dawning Republic One and indivisible of liberty, equality, fraternity, or death. Pause again. So what we have here is the revolutionary France has a motto, just like the United States has a motto. Our motto is, in God we trust. Their motto was liberty, equality, fraternity, or death. That or death really puts it into perspective that this is not an extremely happy time, that death, the killing of people, is not unlikely or uncommon. Picking it back up. A very few French leagues of his journey were accomplished when Charles Darnay began to perceive that for him, along these country roads, there was no hope of return until he should have been declared a good citizen at Paris. Whatever might befall now, he must on to his journey's end. Not a mean village closed upon him, not a common bear dropped across the road behind him, but he knew it to be another iron door in the series that was barred between him and England. The universal watchfulness so encompassed him that if he had been taken in a net or were being forwarded to his destination in a cage, he could not have felt his freedom more completely gone. So Charles Darnay's whole attitude changes during his journey. He starts off thinking that he's going to be able to come in, be safe, save the revolution, save France from the revolutionaries. He's going to be able to calm everybody down. And he realizes as he makes his way through France that that's just not the case, that he is going to be he's going to be stuck there until he proves that he is a good citizen. Picking it back up. The universal watchfulness not only stopped him on the highway 20 times in a stage, but retarded his progress 20 times in a day, by riding after him and taking him back, riding before him and stopping him by anticipation, riding with him and keeping him in charge. He had been days upon his journey in France alone when he went to bed tired out in a little town on the high road, still a long way from Paris. Nothing but the production of the afflicted Gabelle's letter from his prison to the Abbey would have got him on so far. So he has, I'm stopping. So he has this letter from Gabelle saying, you know, hey, I'm imprisoned. They told me that if you come back, I can survive. So could you please come back so they don't kill me? So he has this letter and he shows it every time he gets stopped. And that's the only reason why he's made it so far without being imprisoned, is this letter. Picking it back up. His difficulty at the guardhouse in this small place had been such that he felt his journey to have come to a crisis, and he was, therefore, as little surprised as a man could be to find himself awakened at the small inn to which he had been remitted until morning, in the middle of the night. Awakened by a timid local functionary and 3 armed patriots in rough red caps and with pipes in their mouths, who sat down on the bed. "Immigrant," said the functionary, "I am going to send you on to Paris under an escort." "Citizen, I desire nothing more than to get to Paris, though I could dispense with the escort." "Silence!" growled a red cap, striking at the coverlet with the butt end of his musket. "Peace, aristocrat!" "It is as the good patriot said," observed the timid functionary. "You are an aristocrat, and must have an escort, and must pay for it." "I have no choice," said Charles Darnay. "Choice! Listen to him!" cried the same scowling red cap, as if it was not a favor to be protected from the lamp iron. So pause again. Remembering that the lamp iron here is what they're protecting him from, is from a hanging. They're not talking about a lamp. They're protecting him from death. And that is probably the case, that he would be killed on sight by some if he didn't have this escort the closer he gets to Paris. But it's also a bit of a threat to them, or to him, not them, sorry. "It is always as the good patriot said," observed the functionary. "Rise and dress yourself, immigrant." Darnay complied and was taken back to the guardhouse, where other patriots in rough red caps were smoking, drinking, and sleeping by a watch fire. Here he paid a heavy price for his escort, and hence he started with it on the wet roads at 3 o'clock in the morning. The escort were 2 mounted patriots in red caps and tricolored cockades, armed with national muskets and sabers, who rode one with the other, one on either side of him. The escorted governed his own horse, but a loose line was attached to his bridle, the end of which one of the patriots kept girded around his wrist. In this state they set forth with the sharp rain driving in their faces, clattering at a heavy dragoon trot over the uneven town pavement, and out upon the mire-deep roads. In this state they traversed without change, except of horses and pace, all the mire-deep leagues that lay between them and the capital. So I want you to notice something. Charles Darnay is going to be called several things in this chapter. He starts off as the traveler, and now he is the escorted. Let's keep reading to see what his next label is going to be. They traveled in the night, halting an hour or 2 after daybreak and lying by until the twilight fell. The escort were so wretchedly clothed that they twisted straw around their bare legs and thatched their ragged shoulders to keep the wet off. Apart from the personal discomfort of being so attended, and apart from such considerations of present danger as arose from one of the patriots being chronically drunk and carrying his musket very recklessly, Charles Darnay did not allow the restraint that was laid upon him to awaken any serious fears in his breast. For he reasoned with himself that it could have no reference to the merit of an individual case that was not yet stated, and of representations confirmed by the prisoner in the abbey that were not yet made. Okay, here we have Charles Darnay being a little bit naive again. He thinks that he's shown this letter. He doesn't really think anything of the fact that he's being bound and dragged to Paris by an escort, basically a police escort. He doesn't think anything about that. He thinks that he'll get to Paris, he'll explain the situation, and he'll be fine. He's forgetting who he is. He is the Marquis Saint Evremond, one of the, if not the most hated names in all of France at that time. He's being way too optimistic. All right, picking it back up. But when they came to the town of Beauvais, which they did at eventide when the streets were filled with people, he could not conceal from himself that the aspect of affairs was very alarming. An ominous crowd gathered to see him dismount at the posting yard, and many voices called out loudly, "Down with the immigrant!" He stopped in the act of swinging himself out of his saddle, and resuming it as his safest place, said, "Immigrant, my friends, do you not see me here in France of my own free will? "You are a cursed immigrant," cried a farrier, making at him in a furious manner through the press, hammer in hand, "and you are a cursed aristocrat." The postmaster interposed himself between this man and the rider's bridle, at which he was evidently making, and soothingly said, "Let him be, let him be. He will be judged at Paris." "Judged?" repeated the farrier, swinging his hammer. "Aye, and condemned as a traitor." And this the crowd roared approval. We're going to pause again. What was Charles Darnay first accused of at the very beginning of the book, his first trial? His first trial was being accused of being a traitor to the English crown. He was arrested. He was tried. Very much the same situation here. He is being arrested. He will be tried once again for being a traitor, but this time to the French people. Picking it back up. Checking the postmaster, who was for turning his horse's head to the yard, the drunken patriot sat composedly in his saddle, looking on, with the lines round his wrist. Darnay said, as soon as he could make his voice heard, "Friends, you deceive yourselves, or you are deceived. I am not a traitor." "He lies," cried the smith. "He is a traitor since the decree. His life is forfeit to the people. His cursed life is not his own." At the instant when Darnay saw a rush in the eyes of the crowd, which another instant would have brought upon him, the postmaster turned his horse into the yard, the escort rode in close upon his horse's flanks, and the postmaster shut and barred the crazy double gates. The farrier struck a blow upon them with his hammer, and the crowd groaned, but no more was done. "What is this decree that the smith spoke of?" Darnay asked the postmaster, when he had thanked him and stood beside him in the yard. "Truly, a decree for selling the property of immigrants." "When passed?" "On the 14th, the day I left England." "Everybody says it's but one of several, and that there will be others, if there are not already, banishing all immigrants and condemning all to death who return. This is what he meant when he said your life was not your own. But there are no such decrees yet." "What do I know?" said the postmaster, shrugging his shoulders. "There may be, or they will be. It is all the same. What would you have?" Okay, so we need to make sure that we understand what the word banishment means here. If an immigrant with an E means somebody who moves away from France. Once doing that, this decree will say that you are banished, which means you no longer have right as a citizen of France, or as a human with human rights within France. So when these immigrants come back to France, they're no longer protected under the law. Instead, they are subject to it. And that is what has occurred here. They are condemned to death if they return. And that's exactly what Charles Darnay has done. Now, he immigrated from France nearly 2 decades earlier. But that doesn't really matter. Okay, picking it back up again.